Friends, welcome to my workplace at Ranaghat, West Bengal, India. This cataract appears like a posterior polar cataract, though it can be a posterior subcapsular cataract also. However, I am going to take all the precautions that one should take in a case of posterior polar cataract. The main incision has been made with a 2.8 mm steel keratome, and now this is a side port on the left side of the main incision. One more side port is made on the right side of the main incision. And now the anti-capsule is going to be stained with trypan blue dye underneath this air bubble. If we use an air bubble, the staining is quick and a little bit of trypan blue is required, and there is no staining of the corneal endothelium. The dye is washed out with BSS, and then the anterior chamber is filled up with 2% hydroxypropyl methyl cellulose. And now is the time to do capsulorhexis. I'm going to do it with a utrata forceps. As the utrata forceps goes in, the anterior lip of the main wound is lifted up so that leakage of visco becomes minimal. The anticapsule is torn at the center, a capsular tag is raised, and this capsular tag is guided anticlockwise all around to get an adequate sized capsulorhexis of about 5.5 mm. And now hydrodissection. A very minimal amount of fluid is being injected so that the fluid goes just posterior to the equator, so that it doesn't go beyond the equator. In this way, I get the cataract separated from the anterior capsule and from the equator. Then I do hydrodelineation, and now is the time to manage the nucleus. Visco is again used to fill up the anterior chamber. The machine being used is Ophth Cataract 3. The tip of the Phaco needle goes in with its bevel down, that is towards the nuclear mass. Some superficial cortical lens matter is removed, and now the handpiece is turned to make the bevel up. And now I'm going to divide this nucleus by direct chop. Bury the tip just in front of the main wound, hold the nucleus firmly and chop it. And now the heminucleus on the right side is being emulsified and removed. The heminucleus on the left side is tilted and it is also emulsified and removed. Ultrasonic energy used is only 40% in this case. And now I'm going to manage the epinucleus. I'm going to pull the epinucleus very gently, and the lower portion of the epinucleus comes out. And now I turn the Phaco tip towards the right and try to remove the epinucleus from 7 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. At this time I find it dangerous to hold the nucleus from the upper part, and as I come out I ask my assistant to inject visco. And now I have to manage this remaining epinucleus. I was thinking of use Simcoe cannula to pull this down But then I asked for bimanual irrigation aspiration, and I have taken the irrigating cannula to mobilize this epinucleus downward. So here goes the irrigating cannula of bimanual irrigation aspiration. I go along the equator, and yes, I could mobilize the epinuclear sheet. This is too thick to come out by bimanual irrigation aspiration. It may come, but it will take very long time. So I ask my assistant to get ready with the Phaco probe again. Inject visco behind this epinuclear sheet, and then take the Phaco handpiece again. Go to Phaco 3 mode, epinuclear material removal mode, where the vacuum is about 200, flow rate is 25, and ultrasonic energy is only 30%. And this epinuclear sheet comes very easily, and I find that post capsule is intact. I remove some of cortex by the handpiece itself, and now the remaining cortex I don't dare removing by the handpiece. So I come out, inject visco, and use the bimanual irrigation aspiration cannula to remove the remaining cortex. There are some cortex from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock and a speck of cortex at 2 o'clock. Irrigation from right, aspiration from left, aspiration from the right side port, and I remove all the cortex, and it comes very easily. And now I use aspiration from left and remove some fibers from the right, and this is hydropolish using only the irrigating jet of fluid. Yes, cortical cleanup has been very satisfactory, and now is the time to implant an intraocular lens. And the lens that in such cases I select is multi-piece lens, a 3-piece lens from Johnson & Johnson, and in this case we have selected Technis multi-piece intraocular lens. This is a very good lens. There is Technis multi-piece multifocal lens also available, which can be used in the sulcus in case of posterior capsular rents. And now this is the lens. It has been loaded in the cartridge, and before injecting it into the anterior chamber, I want to enlarge the main wound little bit, making the wound about 3 mm, so that the wound is not stressed too much. This is a B cartridge, and at this time the cartridge is rotated clockwise so that the haptic comes out in a horizontal fashion. Yes, and the cartridge goes to the equator, and as I come out I rotate the cartridge anti-clockwise so that the lens remains flat. And now the trailing haptic is placed in the capsular bag by a McPherson's forceps, and we are done. And now the visco is to be removed nicely. First I use this Simcoe cannula irrigate the anterior chamber, go behind the IOL, irrigate the capsular bag, and remove all the visco, most of the visco. We can use bimanual irrigation aspiration only instead of these Simcoe cannula. But if we use Simcoe first and then bimanual irrigation aspiration, it is good because bimanual irrigation aspiration works better when there is less visco. And any visco molecule anywhere is coming out at this moment. Yes, it is done. So in this video we have taken all precautions that should be taken in a case of posterior polar cataract. Though the cataract appears more in favor of posterior subcapsular cataract, there is no harm that we take all the precautions. And now this is the final lavage of the anterior chamber after closing the side ports by hydrating corneal stroma. The anterior chamber is nicely formed and the case is concluded. Thank you very much for your attention. Hope this video will help you in developing your surgical skills. Be a great surgeon and serve your patients with love, respect, compassion, and great surgical competence.